you very much for joining us. You've been First Minister now for almost 7 years. I'm just wondering, in this term, what is the one thing that you want to do more than anything else? Do you have a personal favourite policy that you're putting forward?
Well, if I'm re-elected as First Minister, my first priority is to continue to steer the country through the COVID crisis. You know, we are making progress, but we're still in crisis, so it's really important that we don't take our eye off that ball. Then, of course, into recovery, and we're putting forward a bold, transformational policy programme. And at the heart of that, as I was setting out very recently, is the plan to double the game-changing Scottish child payment, because I do hope that as we come out of COVID, recover the economy, making an end to child poverty a reality is something that can be achieved over the course of the next Parliament.
Does that matter a lot to you personally? That's a sort of personal favourite of yours?
I think that should matter a lot to everybody. Scotland has lower rates of child poverty than other parts of the UK, but they are still far too high, and nobody can and should feel comfortable. We're the only part of the UK to have the child payment that is a real tangible effort to lift children out of poverty, and the doubling of that over the term of the next Parliament will make a real difference. So that's at the heart of what I think, when we set out our manifesto shortly, will be one of the most transformational policy programmes that we have seen in the lifetime of devolution.
And it focuses on young people who have been particularly impacted by COVID. I mean, everyone's been affected, but these are people, the golden years of their lives, their education. Could you just tell anyone, and young people who are watching this in Scotland who might feel a bit despondent about their future, how can they be more enthused about what lies ahead?
Well, I think the first thing to say to young people is to recognise, I think this has been harder on young people than it has been on anybody else. You know, when you're young, there's lots of things you enjoy doing, there's lots of things that are part of just growing up that young people have been denied over the past year. I've got a young niece and nephews, I've seen that in my own family, and that's replicated right across the country. I think the most important thing I would say to young people is, firstly, this won't last forever. Hopefully we are on the way out of this right now, and you know, I can't guarantee this, but by this time next year maybe it will be a distant memory, not something that you are living through. But secondly, and perhaps most importantly, as First Minister, and if I'm re-elected as First Minister, I'm determined that you and your generation do not pay a long-term price of this. So another key policy at the heart of our manifesto is the young person's guarantee, to make sure that every young person has either access to university, to training, to a job, or to a formal volunteering opportunity, so that we don't have what we saw when I was growing up, a generation of young people that are effectively left on the scrap heap because of economic upheaval.
In Scotland's other public health crisis is the drug death emergency. We still have that shameful record. What is your pledge to reverse that?
I'd set out in Parliament just a few weeks ago what we would do over the next term, backed by record investment. I've appointed a minister with dedicated responsibility for this, and I've been pretty candid that we've not done well enough, and it is something that we, and I personally, am determined to turn around. So the £250 million investment, that is for a range of different things. More investment in community services. I know from my own constituency they provide much needed help, greater access to rehabilitation, faster access, same day access to the treatment that people coming forward need. So there's a whole range of things.
Safe injection sites? Do you think we've got one in Glasgow? Do you think we could see more under the SNP?
I hope so. What we do know is that is not as simple as we would all, or most of us would like it to be, because of the split of the responsibility between Holyrood, where I think there is a consensus to do that, and Westminster, where there is not. But I've met with the individual who runs the one in Glasgow, talked to him. We want to try and progress that. We have, in the meantime, earmarked some investment to roll out the very successful heroin-assisted programme that's working in Glasgow to other parts of the country. So there's a real determination to not be in any way close-minded to anything that can help us turn around something that has been a source of shame for us over the past few years.
It's not a party political issue.
I've made very clear, and I set this out in Parliament, that this should not be a party political issue. Obviously it's not for me to decide what other parties want to take up. It's an important issue for all parties, but I do think there's a lot of consensus and a real determination to try to come together.
Now, we know independence is what you stand for, and it could be that if the SNP get a majority, we'll be talking about a second independence referendum. I just want to clarify on that. If you don't get a majority, is a pro-independence majority in the Scottish Parliament, do you see that as enough for a mandate for IndyRef 2?
If there is a majority of people in the Scottish Parliament who want an independence referendum and they've been democratically elected there, then yes, there is a mandate for a second independence referendum. I'm campaigning for every possible vote I can get for the SNP so that we've got as many seats as possible.
You wouldn't accept the support from the Alba party though?
Look, I'm campaigning for the SNP, and that's my prospectus over the course of this campaign.
I think people would expect. I mean, I'm not trying to catch it. People, I think, would expect that you, because of everything you've been through with Xjamesdestinyx, they would probably expect that you say you wouldn't work with Alba. I'm just giving you the chance to categorically.
I'm not planning to work with Alba. I don't think they are helping the independence cause right now. I think they could hinder it if we give any sense that people are trying to game the system. That can backfire. So I'm concentrating on the SNP. Obviously, it's not for me to say it's not for me to say what other MSPs elected from other parties vote for in a Scottish Parliament, but I am campaigning to get an SNP government re-elected, to have myself re-elected as First Minister, hopefully, although I take nothing for granted given the PR system, we're in an SNP majority, and then when the crisis has passed, to give people in Scotland the choice of independence so that we can have the decision making about Scotland's future in the hands of people here, not in the hands of Boris Johnson at Westminster.
You were against Brexit, and Brexit is impacting Scottish businesses, and many of them fishing. We've reported on the negative impact. One positive impact has been the vaccination programme. Brexit Britain is doing much better than the EU. Can you see that this is maybe an argument that the Unionists can come at you with in this election, that if Scotland was an independent nation in the EU, how many people in Scotland would have been vaccinated?
I guess, bereft of many other positive arguments, it is one the Unionist camp will use. I don't think it stands up to much scrutiny. I mean, the UK is doing incredibly well on vaccination, and Scotland as part of that. I don't think the argument that wouldn't be happening if the UK had still been part of the EU stands up to scrutiny. It would still have been open to the UK to procure its own vaccines and to take the decision it has taken. The other point to make here, which I think is a point that's relevant to all of us. Of course, we all want to vaccinate our own populations as quickly as possible, but we won't be out of COVID until the whole world is properly protected and properly vaccinated. So this competition, while it's perhaps understandable in the short term, won't serve any of us well. We need to see, in a global pandemic, global vaccination as quickly as possible.
Just final question, extending the hand of friendship and rebuilding Scotland after the pandemic. Which of the other political leaders in Scotland do you have the most in common with?
Look, I'm not going to fall into that trap. I'm sure they've all got their good points. We have our political disagreements, but we also will, each of us no doubt, have things that we can agree on. As the First Minister who's had the responsibility to lead us through this pandemic, it's changed my outlook on politics as well as on life, as I'm sure it has for many people. And I'm much more keen than I've ever been before to actually look for the things that unite us. We have our first leaders debate tonight. I hope that perhaps the tone of that might be different to years gone by, where, we'll have vigorous debate, but we recognise that we've all, as a country, as part of a world coming through real trauma, and there's an obligation in all of us to try to make common cause where we can, to find the things we agree on, and I'm certainly up for that if others are.
I was half expecting you to say Alex Salmond there, though, because although he's no longer, you've said you called him your former bestie, politically are you that far apart?
Look, I'm not going to. Alex Salmond can speak for himself. He is perfectly capable of speaking for himself, as I know and as others know. I'm going to speak for myself in this campaign. I'm going to speak for the SNP. I'm going to put forward a positive agenda for the SNP.